I walked away from the 20th Century Harmony book. I feel like there's a little interstitial sort of spot where let me see what the title of the chapter is, because I was like, whoa, man, we're really in the weeds on some technical stuff. I think it was about polychords and polyharmony. Yeah, chapter 7, polychords. Like, without being able to hear that sort of stuff, I felt like it was.
What I don't even know what a polychord is.
Yeah.
Can you describe what the intro says or anything?
Let's see what the.
Because to me, chords mean poly notes, so this means poly notes.
That's correct. Here's the first sentence of the chapter. A polychord is the simultaneous combination of two or more chords from different harmonic areas. Yeah. So, yeah, and polyharmony is seldom polytonal. Polytonality is present only when the chordal units that make up the structure adhere to separate keys. So, same key, blah blah blah, and they're talking about like using it with multiple triads, multiple things based on fourths and fifths, which he's discussed earlier, but then also using triads and things that are based on two triads or three triads or four or whatever, like the parts keep spreading apart on a score looking sort of staff. So yeah, so I kind of walked away from that for a moment, and then his next section, chapter 8, is about harmony, which really is where I think I'm going to pick up. Maybe I'll come back to the polytonality, polychord thing. But that looks interesting. The harmony stuff, it seems interesting. And
What was the last chapter before that when things weren't in the weeds? Because that seemed like it went in the weeds super quick.
Yeah, it was actually. So he treated. So we were talking about him treating coming up with chords by stacking intervals. He did, of course, the traditional stacking thirds. Then he did a chapter on stacking fourths. Then I think he did a chapter on stacking fifths. Then he did another one on stacking seconds, which they typically call clusters because those notes are like very close together. And I hear that in classical music. Sometimes you hear it in percussion an awful lot, like a cluster on the marimba, like that sort of thing, where you could think about it as like if you're playing a stringed instrument, like you're bending up and down kind of thing. If there's 3 or 4 guitar players and they're bending up and down very slightly or more or less or whatever compared to one another, that could be called a cluster because it oscillates on either side of the tonic that they've been or the note that they've been instructed to play. Like, do you ever listen to any of Glenn Branca's stuff or Glenn Branca? Do you know him?
Never heard of it.
Oh man, yeah, he's kind of a, let's see, he's an avant-garde, like 80s 90s ish sort of downtown New York kind of guy, part of the same scene as Sonic Youth and all that sort of stuff. But he is like, do you know Steve Reich? Do you know his stuff at all? Another 20th century composer. Steve Reich is a guy who's known for writing these massive like polyrhythmic percussion pieces. That's like really where he's done other stuff, but his probably his pinnacle recording and composition is called Drumming, and there's lots of like polyrhythms and things like that. Glenn Branca does the same thing but with guitars, like something arranged for 50 electric guitars.
Wow.
That like this cluster idea sort of reminds me of what that would be like to just have guitar players say, play this particular note, slide up to it, do whatever, and then those wind up being clusters, I guess. And again, I hear them in percussion all the time too when I listen to percussion music. Yeah, so that's like arranging seconds basically. And then after that, boom, straight into the weeds with this polychord stuff, which I guess it's not a jump. It is a logical next step in that, okay, we talked about constructing all of these things, thirds, fourths, fifths, and seconds. And I guess if you invert all those, you wind up with thirds, fourths, fifths, and seconds again. Or if you invert them, you wind up with the complement, which is kind of the same stuff. So then, okay, let's just talk about how we just mix all this stuff together.
So when he talks about chords, he doesn't talk about, he's just mentioning intervals. And then if you build them up, does it like, would the 7th chord be a polychord in that case, since it's not a combination of just thirds? Or I guess it is a combination of thirds, so I take that back. So
yeah,
but I still don't quite get why a polychord is different than a one of these other chords, but I guess I'll wait till you read that chapter.
Yeah.
Give me a good example.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like I'm like, whoa. But it sounds like, hey, here are all these are the types of, we talked about building these chords and how to do it, and then like, okay, maybe let's take one stacked by created by thirds and one created by fifths and put it together, and what do we wind up with? That kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But that's actually very naive conjecture on my part. So, yeah, I got into it. And I was like, oh man, like I have to hear some of this stuff and see like what that winds up being or what it winds up sounding like. But I think when he starts to talk about harmony, he'll pull it back a little bit and then talk about like that sort of stuff. And then from there, I actually just kind of diverted down a path about chord progressions, like how to learn what the common ones are and whatever. And I got like some pretty exhaustive books on the situation. This one's like more like a pamphlet. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's
Yeah, chords and progressions.
Yeah. And what he does, like this guy does totally like, okay, well, we know that there's like 7 notes in a scale. But then, he like kind of literally does the combinatorics of like how to select n notes or r notes out of n notes, right? We know how to do combinatorics. And like how to multiply or how to combine all those to tell you that like 12,000 chords now. Like he does that in like a few pages.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. I mean, this is sort of, I think it's kind of like daily or weekly lessons about how to do the different types of triads and all of that. And then he goes into an exhaustive discussion about chord progressions, how to pick them out, how to form them. When you hear a seventh chord or when you hear a flat sixth type of thing, like you can predict he's saying you can predict very accurately about where it's going next. That's super interesting. And then,
Well, as far as what's going next, I hear a lot of that. I've also been actually watching on Mac Pro Video a course on chord progressions,
uh
and he talks a lot about chord progression cadences
yeah, that's right.
and how whenever he'll play these things, and it's like, can you feel how when you get to the fifth, it's drawing you to the next chord? And he kind of
Yeah,
explains
exactly.
it's doing that through minor seconds that are embedded in the chord that want to resolve into more common notes that you've been hearing.
Yeah,
And that was the first time that made some sense to me. I always just heard it as stated to me as plain fact, like that this feels like home, and this is going away from home and leading towards home. And this was the first person who explained, like, this is why that it is actually the content of these chords
yeah,
being close to the more common note that is a minor second away. And I guess I could kind of feel that. And I would play on the guitar a couple times, just those particular notes within the chord to feel like, oh yeah, there is something weird that draws you to it. And I hate that that's the way they presented it at first to me,
right.
instead of giving me the building blocks. But I get it now somewhat.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard. Like it's one of those things. It's like, well, do you feel drawn to it because you've listened to like 200 Beatles songs that do that, or are you really drawn to it? Like, there's like you can't have that like clean slate sort of approach to it. And some people speak about it as if it's a clean slate, but it's actually not. Like, it's the whole like, why aren't there ever new fonts in the New York Times? It's like, well, because people are just used to seeing Times New Roman, and that's all. In fact, it's probably named after that kind of thing. It's like, well, and if you're a font designer, you're like, well, fuck, man, I have this really great font that's readable and whatever. Like, what about me? It's like, oh, start your
Yeah.
own newspaper, I guess. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
Maybe
So
press
I
M.
got this thing, pretty
How to
nice.
master chord changes and harmony.
Yeah, and this is, I don't know, 150 pages, something like that. And it's another like exhaustive sort of thing about harmony. Spends very little time on how to formulate chords. It talks about so I have the chord building stuff. I feel okay about, but it does talk about the modes. It talks about cadences and like how to use certain chords within certain modes. But this is the first book that actually pointed out to me that the harmonic minor and the melodic minor are actually constructed scales. Like I thought they were each one of the modes, but they're not. Now that's again super naive. I didn't know that. So with an exhaustive kind of look at modes and how to form them or how to build them, um, yeah, I didn't realize that. And the 20th Century Harmony book talks about schemes for building other scales. Like if you alternate a half step and three half steps, like you can come up with any stupid thing. That's and
Yeah.
actually the harmonic minor and the melodic minor are any stupid thing. And really the focus is on the leading tone, which is the thing that's before the octave. So it's a whether it's a seventh or a flat seventh or whatever. And that was kind of interesting. Like so you can play in a minor key yet still have the pull from the seventh, whether because in a natural minor the seventh to the octave is a full step, but in the major scale it's a half step, and these things are like designed to do that, where you can actually play the third is flatted as it is in a minor chord, where the root and the fifth are um, unmodified, but then the seventh, and I think maybe the sixth also gets modified, but the key bit is the leading tone, which is the seventh. Like that, closer to the root or closer to the octave, it has a greater pull. And again, minor second kind of situation. And the scale is just modified so that you can actually still play with a minor feel with the flat three, but then also pull toward the tonic when you start using seventh chords.
Yeah, what a much more compelling way of like discussing the seventh than I've ever heard before. Actually, just hearing you put into words and then remembering things that I just learned, like about this pool. Like, I guess it's the emotion and the back and forth about music that we like,
Uh-huh.
and this is actually talking about the seventh in terms of what it does for the chords that are composed with those notes and how they feel related to the root. Um, that's really that's really much more reason to care about those sevenths than I had ever done before. I always thought like, well, you learn your bar chords and that's where the energy comes from. And then if you want to do jazz, you do the
Yeah,
seventh.
right. Yeah, there's still that, like, if you want to do like, now check out the seventh. Doesn't it sound jazzy? I'm like, not on its own. Like, yeah, you got to have Tony Williams doing his thing and Herbie Hancock doing his things. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, sounds like a chord with like a nice little like flourish on the top. But
Yeah,
that's not necessarily jazz. What, there are no seventh chords in metal? I'm sure there are.
right.
Yeah.
But if you look at it more as like the opportunity to connote more of this push and pull by
Yeah.
adding those in, I think it really makes a lot of sense. This tutorial that I was watching mentioned how you can borrow chords by going to the fifth of the chord of the. So let's say you're going to a C and you want to get to the C in a natural way,
Like you're
and but
changing keys or.
not you're changing keys, but you want to get to C. You know that C's coming up, and you've gone to it before by going like, let me be sure I get this right. Let's say you would go like you just had a two chord progression. It was like F C F C,
Yeah.
and you wanted to throw a new chord in there to throw in the fifth above C, which is a G,
Yeah.
and make it a dominant seventh,
Yeah.
so that you get the so it'd be G seventh, and you would be pulling towards that C because in the key it pulls to the C. So I'm not explaining it there very well. I'm saying it out
So
loud, but
the five chord pulls to the root also. That's the other, yeah, the five
yeah.
function as well.
So
I don't
even
know.
if that five chord doesn't appear in your particular scale, borrow it because you're going to get to a chord that is going to feel like you were getting there
Yeah,
from that chord anyway.
yeah. There's lots of talk of that. And then what else did I watch? Or what else did I want to say about that? Um, that slipped my mind. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion. Oh, the one guy, the first book, the piano chords and progressions book, he was saying that every time you have a fifth, and I can't remember if he was focused on just rock or whatever. I don't think he was, because I think he had some stuff about traditional songs in there, or whatever. He was saying that whenever you play the fifth chord, in a scale, you play the seventh with it. Like, so he was saying that it sounds, even a 1 5 1 progression sounds, and I don't know whether he said better or more solid or whatever when you play the fifth chord as a seventh chord. And we talked about Louis Louis before, and I just know that that's 1 4 5. Nobody told me it was 1 4 5 with the seventh. Nobody told me that.
And
And
is it?
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
That's something that's like on my little list of things that maybe I'll do. um, yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So there's been like a lot of like little, there's still like more details. It's all, and then this How to Master Chord Changes in Harmony book talks about, okay, here are these really important, like they exhaustively write out the modes, and then they write out the modes of the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, and like how are they used, and then they actually pick out the modes of each, modes based on the major scale, harmonic minor, and melodic minor, and then talk about which of those modes you see most often. Because there are ones that are super dissonant and like they have whatever, they say little to no use. I'm sure somebody's using them or has used them. Like the Locrian, right? That one they say is very difficult. Listen to a guy like Rick Beato, he's like, oh man, it's like the darkest of all modes or this or that. But it doesn't, like, a lot of the notes don't sound like they belong together whenever I listen to a Locrian scale.
But
And
when you listen to Symphony and Destruction, you don't have that feeling,
yeah, right.
right? And
Right.
that's one of the ones that they always use as an example of Locrian. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
I had
that
no idea.
dun 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 dun, that part, right? That emphasizes the flatted two and the
Sure.
minor sixth and going down to the root of, and so you get most of the notes of Locrian from that really simple riff, and it sounds just totally cool. It doesn't, to me, sound dark, or I mean maybe anything by Megadeth sounds dark in a way. So it's, I
Right.
don't
I think, yeah.
necessarily believe it's the mode in this case, but maybe there's more to it than that.
Interesting. Because yeah, so like metal has like its own like little category for whatever reason, or it always has its uh there's always a discussion about like, well, like it's the Beatles, it's not Megadeth or whatever. And even when you read Tab and whatever, of course, I mean these things like, so now I understand why people say that certain well, things about metal in particular, where you're only ever doing a power chord with just a root and a fifth, which has no character of major or minor, like it just sort of floats there, but like the entire sound is built on that sort of thing. It's kind of
Right.
I mean, would I say that the stuff has that I can't hear a character of major or I have no idea. That's an interesting thing for me to like consider. But then the other thing is like, okay, so there's that part that stupid metal does is no thirds, and then it also emphasizes chromaticism and like that. So I've heard that something like Symphony of Destruction is positioned as like, well, metal just doesn't give a shit. They'll just play, 12 chromatic steps in a row, and that's metal. Like chromaticism is like the thing, and that
Right.
may be an over educated discussion of the whole thing, but maybe, and also maybe Locrian is too. But I've never actually heard anyone say that a song that I would know actually is in Locrian. That's interesting.
Well, crap.
Yeah.
I think I got it wrong. I think Symphony of Destruction is in Phrygian after all that.
Ah, okay.
I screwed that up. So I don't know. That's the thing, is I always get these confused, and maybe that's it makes me look like an idiot. But it's okay, because the point here is we can get confused by all these weird names, and the fact that I can make that mistake is is why I'm trying to learn this better, so that I can
Yeah.
have a better feeling of what this all means.
Yeah, and this the white book that I showed, they're like, yeah, there like it's dizzying how many things there are, but then like only like 2 out of 3 of the 7 or 8 scales based on each scale formula are like super useful, and you hear them all the time. So like use those first and then like start branching out, which is that nobody's ever called that out before. Like the 20th century harmony one is just makes you feel like you have like everything is super important, and maybe it is. That's great. But this one is like, well, there's like the handful of these things that you're going to hear all the time, and then it draws a cool parallel between is it seventh chords over? I can't remember. I just read it like this afternoon. There was something where it's like, oh, hey man, if you're ever playing seventh chords over anything, you want to play over a Lydian dominant scale. Like that's what you want to do, or you want to choose no like it. So it actually is drawing like connections with things that like live well together. If you, I mean, I don't plan on any solos, but but I'm sure the melody writing may help, or whatever. If a melody's going over something that's harmonized. So I think those kinds of parallels and those sorts of like tricks are being discussed and emerge. I think this book maybe gives some examples of songs that use these, but no, maybe not. But it seems pretty good. And then then like the second half of the book is about cadences and about like basic chord progressions, or a lot of them. It's like again an exhaustive list of stuff. Like the cadences I usually think of at the moment as like two or three things that lead in a particular way, but this is talking about like a long cycle of like chord changes that resolve to your one, but like go out and then come back rather than short little things. Right? There's all of those idea, but it does
Yeah.
start with like 151, and then it goes to, or maybe the other book did it too, 151, and then it did 145, and blah blah blah.
How do you feel about this notion of using songs that you know as a way to hear the modes better? In some ways, I feel like it should be useful, but then it's not. Like, how easy is it for you to sing one Megadeth song when another one is playing? It's like your brain. I find it very hard to like remember or say this sounds like this song when I'm listening to another song. And sometimes you might say, "Oh, this sounds like this sounds a lot like Hotel California because it's got that scale in it." But
Yeah,
I don't know if that will how well that will scale for a bunch of songs, or it's just a certain feel. Do
yeah.
you
I
ever
mean,
try that
for,
technique?
yeah. For me, I do not count myself amongst the folks who have like facility on a melodic instrument. So for me to like um, come up with something like a blank slate kind of thing where I'm purposefully doing something with a particular scale or whatever, that's going to take me a while. And you have a ton of muscle memory on the guitar. I have a ton of
Yeah.
muscle memory about drums, but none of them are tuned to a note. Like it's just not like that way. um and I don't know, I am interested in those kinds of things. Like, did we talk about Rick Beato doing the videos about Sting and how
We
he
did
writes?
not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not on this podcast thing.
Yeah. Like I thought that was really good, and he's like, why can't you like mess with what Sting does? And I was like, oh, I mean, Sting's rad, great. And like I love the Police, and I've like developed a lot of my like interests around lots of drumming sorts of things, and blah 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 from listening to the Police. And I actually don't even mind Sting's solo stuff. I mean, it's a adult contemporary right now. It's, I don't know. Stuff probably still sounds good. I think he's a good musician. I do like his first like two or three solo records. Those were good. But then he just kept going on and on, and yeah, and Beato like did a really good dive into like some of the techniques that he finds in Sting's songs, and from the early days all the way from the early days of the Police all the way through a lot of his solo stuff. And I was like, wow, damn, that's quite deep and quite an accomplished guy, writing simple-ish songs on the first Police record, all the way through to more complicated ones in the Police's career and beyond. I thought that was super interesting, and to be
It's
able to,
really great when you see somebody whose music seems very approachable, but then still has these really interesting elements. So that when you see like this shredder guitarist who's talking about his modes and doing all these weird things with his modes, and you know it, you can kind of say, well, that's why it's not good, because somebody like Sting can do cool things with modes and have a interesting, non-obvious progressions and no choices without it being just shredding for the point of shredding. Like he's actually still telling a story. It seems like those chords, I don't know if it's from listening to it all the time, but it seems like Sting really knows how to use chords to write a story or give some sort of arc of tension and release.
Yeah, totally.
So I love that Beato. That was one of my favorite what makes a song great or what makes this artist great type of things that he's done.
Yeah, I think that dude excels in that particular series because he talks about the recording process. He always has like cool like multi-tracks where you can like listen to all of the like little things going on. Like that's a different kind of development of your ear and a different kind of development of your aesthetic that I really enjoy. Like the technical parts of recording and the technical parts of ear candy and a mix and all that kind of stuff is like super super cool. And I feel like that's also equally interesting to somebody writing and somebody listening as well. Like, yeah, that stuff's really, really, really great. And he's got a ton of them, man. He's got a ton of them from like far and wide. And he does some pretty interesting things. I mean, he's got ones about Slipknot. I'm like, okay, cool. Kind of fine, I guess. I'm not sure how much underlying technical stuff he talked about in that one. I did watch. He has probably. I feel like he has two of them, but I did watch them, but I can't recall much of them.
The nice thing about those things is that I don't watch any of the ones for the songs that I don't think are great or I don't think the bands are great. So
Yeah.
I never get to be annoyed by it. He's just like, if his series was what I think about this song, and you would come to your favorite song and he would say he thinks it sucks, and this is why, you wouldn't hate that. But it's a positive message of the song. So I'd never watched the Slipknot one. Don't care for the band, and didn't get to hear why he liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the opposite, but I'm on the other side of that. Is that I'll watch every one just to see if I can get one little thing out of whatever it is. I'll sit through nearly anything. I mean, I like his presentation style, and he's got an exceptional ear as a producer to like pick out things, and I definitely like want to use that in my own work, like with Great Falls. Like we're talking about writing our next record, which who knows if it'll ever see the light of day. Who knows when we'll ever play a show again. But we'll see. But we're writing now, and I'm like, hey, I really would like to talk about creating these things so we can maybe put some strings in there, or maybe do some this or that, and not heavy-handed, like, hey, this is our song where we had to hire a string quartet. Nothing like that, but just like something that provides that little bit of interest. And I think that is one of the things that's driving my study this summer overall, is that I have the time to do it. And then I have like a little bit of a long term, like sort of whatever, could be a goal or a fantasy at this point. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Like I want to find out where in stuff that I'm involved writing, like where it shows up. And it's it's difficult to break from, well, not break, but to modify the punk aesthetic of like, we're going to do an hour's worth of music and we have to do all the basic tracks in a weekend. It's like, that's hard, man. Like super hard. And bands that do it, bless them. And that there's just so many, like I've worked on so many different recordings over the years. There's like a drum tech and blah blah blah, all these kinds of things, and like learn these little things that make recordings have some more depth or whatever. And not that depth or lack thereof is a judgment on how a song is recorded or written. I just see it as opportunity, and I would like to take some of those opportunities and like see where those things go. I mean, I feel the same way about effects pedals. Some guys are anti that sort of thing. Not me, man. I'd like to see a guy like fucking tap dancing on his board while I play drums with it. I love that shit. Like it's really, really good. Yeah, just possibilities that are available to us for sure. I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, Rick Beato has he definitely has an excellent ear, and I like a lot of his videos. I think the only problem I have with him is that he's not a good explainer of the things that come naturally to him. He can point out things in recordings and things like that, but I don't appreciate the Rick Beato book. Whenever he does a guitar, how to play guitar better, or the one trick to make your guitar playing better,
Yeah.
I feel like he looks at it from a different lens than I'm coming from. And he's just like, oh, isn't this cool? And I'm like, yeah, that part was obvious to me. I want to know what this other thing that you have is. And to him, he wouldn't know how to explain uh, the things that matter to me about what makes him a good player. So it's one of those things where somebody's it can be difficult for a musician to explain things that they've known all their lives. It would be very difficult for me to teach someone how to ski. I will use verbs like snowplow that they won't know as a first time skier.
Yeah.
And I will have muscle memory in my feet that they just won't have, and I won't be able to explain ever. So that's all these YouTube people. That's the issue I have with them, is that sometimes they'll state things as just obvious when they never knew that it could be not obvious for anybody
And actually,
else.
that it actually also for them started out as not obvious as well. They just forgot.
Yeah,
Right?
probably.
From day one when we're born, everything's not obvious till it's pointed out to us or we experience it. That's for sure. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like that sort of discussion or that sort of teaching or training, like it takes a practiced like hand to do that sort of thing. I agree with you. And yeah, you read a book and you're just like, oh man, I'm 3 chapters in and it's shit because they're not doing a good job of whatever. And I somehow got to the end of this 3rd chapter and I feel like I'm supposed to understand, and maybe I think I do, but I'm not sure about it at all. Yeah, totally. For me, I guess with a guy like that, he appears to know so much. And anytime I watch anything, I always find, one small detail that's kind of, it doesn't change my life, but it like changed the way I think about maybe one small thing, and that's enough for me.
That's valuable. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's tons of guys like that there. He's one of them. And actually, a lot of this probably started out with me purchasing the Beato book.
Yeah.
But then it got very guitar heavy, like a third of the way in. I was like, okay, I get it, but I think maybe I need a little bit more general sort of stuff. Like there wasn't a general discussion of those things, and I went for a general discussion, and I got exhaustive discussions of these things in these other books, which is also good, like super interesting that I was able to find those things and then make some sort of sense. I mean, they're very academic, but I can make some sort of sense out of them, which is quite nice.
Yeah, my guitar teacher is like my guru for all these things musical, and he's really good. He's not especially supportive of me learning more about modes and things like that. Uh, he has learned all this stuff from just playing and doing a lot of different songs, just having developed a feel for it. And again, it's one of those. He's a great teacher in some ways, and not the perfect teacher for me and others, because he's got this vocabulary internally that may be hard for him to expose.
Yeah.
So I think you end up using him for what he's good for, and then using these books for what they're good for, and Rick Beato what he's good for, Adam Neely. All these people they all have their faults for sure, and I would love to go into detail about them, but I think it's not productive. So yeah, you just take what you can from everybody.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we've talked about Adam Neely before. Like for me, he does all of the things that I like that I feel curious about for the most part. The one where he talked about the A440 and A432 or wherever the heck that argument is, I was like, yes, somebody like went there, because it's one of those things. It's like, everybody knows it. Like, that's the music they don't want you to hear, bro. And it's like in an internet fashion, that's the way it is, right? It's just like, yeah, everybody knows that the Earth is flat. It's like, oh god, seriously? How, based on what? Well, if you have to ask, you'll never know. It's like that's not a reason. So that's
Yeah, all these people would have their weaknesses exposed in a scientific with a scientific approach to their claims, and they're never going to subject themselves to it. Rick Beato had this thing where he was trying to tell the difference between strings, whether the lighter gauge or heavier
oh yeah, I
gauge,
saw
and
that one.
his friends got together and they all decided the same thing, that this gauge was the best or whatever it was. And I was like, I can guarantee you, could put you in a blind test for this situation, and the results would be conclusively inconclusive, that everyone would have different opinions and there wouldn't be this consensus that they formed.
It's funny because something on my feed came up and it was like the title was something like Rick Beato was right about my string gauge, and I don't think it was a guy who was in the initial thing. Super interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's when I was learning like recording and mixing and mastering, I was like, if you can hear that I used an analog device versus this kind of thing, it's that, or like the everything sounds better on vinyl. It's like, absent the pops and clicks, can you really tell? Like it's
right.
that for me, who's just naive about strings, I just know I need a heavier gauge because I like to tune down more. That's really all I know, and it's gotten me this far.
Well, what about drumsticks? Do you feel like you would be able to hear if someone was playing with a heavier drumstick?
Oh God, no, not hear it. Absolutely not. I mean, maybe I would hear it in my own playing, and that I've developed a preference for a type of stick, for its thickness, for its length, for where the fulcrum is or the balance point. Like I definitely have that sort of thing. But I mean, there are ones like I pick up like Alex Van Halen's signature stick. It's like 17 and a half inches long, and it's like I can't remember what the weight is. It's like, whoa, I like long sticks. Like I
Mm.
play. I even think that back in the days when you and I were playing in a cover band, like I think I was using the same sticks then. Like I developed a preference for them then, and they've been around forever. But for me, like I like a longer stick, and then a very like real thing happens. Like so and so gets his like signature model put out by this particular company, and then like a very real thing happens. Like the guy gets old and passes away, and then they stop making that stick, like that sort of thing. And that's uh, a really odd concern of mine when I find a stick that I really like. Yeah, I've been known to go like, well, every Christmas I'll just buy like 10 more pairs of that. While the guy's still alive, I'll just do that until, well, yeah, and
So
that's
you think in another year you won't be able to get the Neil Peart sticks anymore?
too soon. I actually tried the Neil Peart sticks. They're not long enough, and they're too thin. They're too thin. Like
Mm.
and he, I think, developed a new-ish stick after he studied with the jazz guy. And yeah, it's super interesting. And so I like a longer stick and I like a heavier stick. And for the type of stuff, like if I play a blast beat, like we're doing some grindcore-ish like little section or something where I play a blast beat, it's like it's unheard of to use a long, heavy stick to do that sort of thing. Generally, I mean, I'm sure there's other guys doing the same thing I am, but yeah, I think over time I've just developed a particular preference, and I it feels different, and I probably would be able to hear the difference, but I mean, who knows? But certainly not in another player. It's like, yeah, that guy'd be good if his sticks weren't so light, not like Danny Carey or somebody. Like I'm like, no, he sounds great doing what he does.
Right.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
We'll just wait for Rick Beato to come up with this pick comparison video or something. That's the type of thing I don't know. I hear pick more than I hear string differences.
Yeah,
Even though the string is making the sound, like the pick can make a plucking sound. It can make it seem heavier. The amount you bend the string before it gives changes. That's the main thing.
yeah.
And whether or not it scrapes at all, based on the material, that to me makes a much bigger difference than if I've got 8 or 9s. And that's the thing. Like obviously, thickness is gonna matter, but they were talking about like 8s, 9s, 10s. They weren't saying like, can I tell between like 12s and 7s or something like?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
At some point, there's got to be like a plateau where there's really not that much different. Yet they still had a very particular. And if there is that difference, why the heck aren't there 8.5s and 9.5s? If they feel such a difference, you would think that some company would mine that precision in feel.
I'm sure somebody is, but yeah,
I've
not
never heard of it.
broad
I've
market.
never heard of these half gauge strings. It's always just 8, 9s, 10s.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and actually, I think I feel a different pick way more than I do the strings. I feel like maybe again, I think maybe I'm I feel stuck with the strings that I use because I don't think there's any particular kind. It's just that the gauge is heavier, so it holds the tune at a lower. But I mean, I can definitely sense the difference between using like a medium pick and a heavy pick and blah blah blah. Like I sense that sort of difference.
Yeah.
But fuck, again, I don't have facility on these things in any way that garners me the right to like philosophize about that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Drumsticks, yes, but no. Anything else, no. Or even cymbal weights, yes, but nothing else.
I think my drumsticks are just Dave Weckles or something. Is that the name?
Probably.
Dave. Yeah, there's the Guitar Center guys like take these. Like, okay,
That's so
I
weird
don't
because
know.
Dave Weckl studied with the same jazz guy that eventually Neil Peart studied with, and Dave's sticks got shorter and lighter, so he gave you like a baby pair of sticks, according to me. Like I bought a pair of Weckl sticks because he was like, "Oh, they're perfectly balanced. They're this, they're that, they're the other thing." It's like, well, I don't know. A seesaw, any seesaw is perfectly balanced if you know what to do with it.
Interesting.
And
Well, I should try it because I'm a big guy. I have a lot of long, so I should possibly appreciate the longer stick.
yeah, but his sticks are like short and too light. I didn't like
What's a good long stick? I'll order some on Amazon right now.
a good long stick. I like the Vinnie Paul model. Speaking of guys who've passed away, I like the Vinnie Paul Vic Firths. Those are good. I like the Wicked Piston, which is who's the guy who plays for Dream Theater now? Mike Mangini from Boston. I like those sticks. I'm using those right now, and then I'm also using Virgil Donati's sticks. They're called like the Destroyer or the Crusher or the Dominator or some silly thing. That guy is from another planet as far as his like rhythmic abilities go. He's insane, super good. I listen to that guy all day.
Is Mike Mangini a Vader?
Yeah, it's Vader. It's called like the Wicked Piston or something like that.
Oh yeah.
They're long. Yeah, the Virgil Donati stick is long. I use those interchangeably these days. I was using the Vinnie Paul stick for a while, but I think I like these Vaders a little bit better.
I'm gonna go with the Wicked Piston just because I
Yeah,
like the name.
yeah, those are really good. He's a super interesting dude and an insane drummer. But like a lot of academic playing in that guy too. But he does a pretty good job. He's played with everybody, man. He's played with Steve Vai for a number of years. He's done that sort of thing.
You know, I just met this week. I met Jordan Rudess.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, hopefully going to be building an app with him.
I was gonna say he's really really active in those like communities. Like, wasn't what's that surf? Not a surfboard. What's that thing? It's like a black keyboard where you can play vibrato on each key.
Rolly, but
Is
they
that
call that thing they're going to kill me for not knowing their name of the thing. They're something board. Um, they recently discontinued the longer version of it. Oh, Rolly Seaboard.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that thing. Like I feel like he was pretty active with that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that uh, I always say about Jordan. Like, I build apps, so you could give me my iPad with my best synth app, you know, all the bells and whistles on it,
Yeah.
and I would play it. And you could give him the same iPad with a dead battery, and he would make that iPad sound better than I made my living iPad. He's just a really amazing musician,
Yeah.
and just does. He can make anything sound good. That's why all these companies always get him to demo the products because he can just make it sound great, and then all the people watching be like, "Oh, I need that app because he's great at it." Like, well,
Yeah, he's
that's
one of
what he
those guys
does.
who's like super posy and like very excited all the time, it seems. And like I don't think he
It's
like,
more than it seems. He definitely is a super excited, very
I would say
positive
as
person.
a side effect, he's kind of a natural salesman because of his like just his enthusiasm about the stuff. Like
Mm.
he's not a heavy-handed salesperson, but his excitement like is contagious or whatever about things. I could totally see that about the guy. Why on earth that band is still going, I have no idea, but all right. Like,
Do you not like Dream Theater?
not anymore. I mean, I liked their first couple records, and by liked, I haven't listened to them in probably 10 or 15 years. Uh,
Mm.
and then, yeah, I mean, I was actually curious to see what Mike Mangini does with them because, like, that lineup was together a very long time. Like, it was pretty much the original lineup, I want to say, for years and years. Like, they're mostly from Long Island, so I got their first record when it was like only in sort of a local market when I was a kid, and I was like, "Whoa, this is like," yeah, and that was probably around the height of my I'm a drummer, so I listen to Rush period, and that's another band I haven't listened to new stuff in a million years because it's all terrible. Love those guys, but yeah, it's just not so good. But yeah, I liked that, and I liked the first major record that broke them. I want to say it's called like Images and Words or something like that. Quite good. I enjoyed it, but then like it just it's the same tricks over and over. Like yeah, it's not my bag. But I mean, it's like that's what you get when you get a bunch of Berkeley guys doing that sort of thing, or BIT or GIT or whatever their deal is. Some mix of all that. It'd be really great. But yeah,
Somehow, when they first came out, I lumped them together with Blue Murder. I don't know if this is the two-word title, but
uh,
just a band that was a super group. They said, "Oh, you're gonna like this because all the musicians are great." And I was like, "Red alert! This is gonna be not good because everyone's playing all the time." But I think Dream Theater is better than I had worried when I heard that.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and actually, I liked John's guitar playing. I thought it was kind of cool, and I mean, I like that. I as a young musician, like I gravitated to that because they were professionally trained rock musicians, which means they were studying jazz like motherfuckers for years. Like, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's not popular to talk about. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Like those sort of like acrobatic feats on drums or guitar or whatever else is like, yeah, super interesting.
How about their singer didn't resonate with me? I think that was the other thing I remember, that the singer
Yeah,
was too much of a singer almost.
yeah, and he's getting worse because his range is just decreasing as it does with age. Very normal thing.
Could Doesn't necessarily make it worse. Could actually make him change his style to be more interesting.
Well, yeah, that's the I think that he tries to. I think he still tries to.
Uh,
It's a little much. But I mean, there's some cool footage of Mangini doing those new songs, doing insane shit. Which I again, as a drummer who likes the acrobatic sorts of feats, I think are quite cool and interesting. He's got insane parts, insane chops, insane like independence. Like he does crazy shit, but the songs are just not compelling.
hmm. So, by the way, to bring this back to like music harmony a little bit, um, do you see there's benefit in playing with different kinds of sticks um, to develop a range of abilities? That if you would learn to play with that skinny, light, short stick,
Uh-huh.
would it then would you end up having more versatility? Because this is somewhat related to what we're doing. Like, why are we learning some of these fancier harmonic concepts? Because we feel like if we work ourselves out on both ends of the spectrum, we can come back to the rock or whatever it is
Uh-huh.
and be more interesting for having explored different territories. Does that work with equipment as well, or is it just in the brain?
No, God, yeah. I mean, as a drummer, absolutely. Like I have cymbals for all contexts, and sometimes there's overlap, and sometimes there isn't. And I actually, yeah, there's lots of different sticks I prefer. Some of them shorter, some of them thinner at the tip, etc. Like I'm just talking about playing loud, playing
Uh,
somewhat fast, with some articulation. But sometimes things are too fast to properly, not properly, but to even just fit articulation in a short amount of time. Or to me, like, and there's a lot of practicing that I could do to try to get the articulation loud, which is really hard to do.
Mm,
It's just it's a whatever. It's a constraint of time and space for me as it is for anybody. But certainly, like if I play, I love to play jazz. I love to improvise on a small drum kit with like big soft cymbals that like really respond in a particular way, and the stick bounces off them, and I could do tons of like different things with a thin, short stick that bounces very well. Absolutely.
okay.
Like I don't like in Great Falls. I never so much as do like a roll, because rolls are like they're dainty in a way. Like it's
Uh,
when I do pull back and play things that are more not jazzy in the sort of like hip cat kind of way, but jazzier, like where it's pulled back, maybe it swings a little bit, maybe there's a little articulation. That's a nice contrast. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to be able to do some recordings with those guys where it's different drum kits, like
mm.
for different songs and different symbols. Like I like to swap out my symbols, but again, it's tyranny of time, space, and paying by the hour kind of thing that like squashes that a little bit. But I don't know. I've messed around with all that. So different snare drums, blah blah blah. Different things tuned different ways. Like I mean, I don't in any loud band. I mean, I don't tune my drums so that I like can do graceful things with them. I never do that. I just want them to be uh, punches to the face that you can't escape, kind of thing. But
Right.
but otherwise, I enjoy all that shit. I mean, it's yeah, and there's tons of things just getting sticks to bounce and physically do what they do. That's what I learned that from oddly enough from Dave Weckels videos in like the maybe the 90s when he changed his style or studied with that jazz guy. Neil Peart did a video like that too, but I didn't find his discussions or his teaching to be the same caliber, or maybe it was more difficult for me to follow for some reason. But like there's lots of things that are interesting. I've played with like those like there's like a Buddy Rich signature stick that has like a tip that's not very well distinguished from the rest of the stick. Like there's tons of stuff. Yeah, and I do what you just did. Like I'll take a pair of those and see what that sounds like. I mean, it's like $9 or something. Sure, send me a pair of
Yeah.
those and I'll try it out and see where it leads me. Like I love that sort of thing, and I feel like I approach pretty much anything that way that seems sort of interesting. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll get whatever this particular thing is and see where it leads me. I don't know. Yeah, that's definitely my approach on anything.
Yeah, like you mentioned rolls, it made me think about when I see like drum notation.
Uh-huh.
Uh, there's like stuff that is notated, like it's like with music theory. There's stuff that is notated, but then things get smaller and smaller in scale to a point where a lot of times the notation just turns into like slashes or something. Like, oh, I know that's a roll, but it's up to the performer to do that
Yeah,
roll.
yeah,
Or a trill on the guitar.
yeah.
You'll just see do a trill between these two notes, and there's nothing in the music notation about it, and the harmony stops at that point too. Like there's certain things that they're kind of grand in scale that you get, and then there's others these small things, and sometimes the magic is in those small things more than the grandiose thing. Like what does make like someone could transcribe Steve Vai's part,
Uh-huh.
but unless it's him playing it and something interesting about the way he's picking, the way he's moving his fingers around, that makes it him.
Yeah.
Uh, and and also like in terms of the other thing you said about about weighted drumsticks, made me think about like the string conversation, because yeah, with lighter strings, you're going to be doing a lot more bendy stuff, and you're going to actually have to have more control when you hold that chord, so you're not accidentally bending out. And
Totally.
then with the heavier strings, you can really work out your right hand and bash into those strings and
Yep.
learn a completely different thing. So to say like, oh, this is definitely the right string now is almost like saying uh, that's the only drumstick I use. Like there's a reason why these different strings exist. It's not just because each person is different, but each application is different, and
Yeah.
what you intend to do, what you're learning at that moment, is affected by your equipment as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you wouldn't paint the inside of your house with outdoor exterior paint, right? Or vice versa, right? That's yeah, for sure. And
Hmm.
I think that it's like these decisions get made again because of like the tyrannies of time, space, money, whatever. And you just wind up like I was that way with snare drums. Like I think until like I mean, damn, it's got to be till like 5 years ago or something. I've always played $100 snare drums. Like I mean, I've always had nicer snare drums. I have a handful of them from various like sorts of eras. I've got a couple vintage ones that are really nice. I've got a couple of super modern ones that are nice, and ones in between. But I mean, for any like knucklehead sort of metal loud shit, I'd never bother. But then one year the right drum was on sale and I tried it out. I mean, that's the other thing is like you go into Guitar Center and you like pick up a drum and you start playing it. So well, you play it because to how the guy in the drum department tuned it, and he's some knucklehead just like you are, like whatever, like
Right.
who knows. So you never actually get to put these things through their paces in the way that you would. Like I'd go home, first thing I would do, change the fucking heads, like put different snares on it. Like I like copper snares versus other ones, blah 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 blah. It's little tiny things that all add up. But then I like, yeah, I'm playing a like a grown up snare drum. Sounds great. Like it doesn't fall apart.
You finally settled on the Saint Anger signature series drum sound.
Hell yeah, dude! And now I can go back and just do snare drum replacements on all the recordings I've ever done. Totally, like it's yeah, exactly. Uh, yeah, and no more ride cymbal, just a China cymbal right in that spot because I don't want any. Man, it's got that guy so ridiculous. He doesn't have a ride cymbal anymore. Like, all right,
Oh, he really doesn't?
no, he doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's pretty strange. That's another band that why do they keep going?
I'll still see them when they come around when the coronavirus
Oh,
ends because
geez.
they're fun to watch, but I don't
You go
really
every
want
time
them to.
they tour?
I haven't recently, but I still enjoy
I
them.
didn't go with you to see them on the Black Album. No, you were gone from school by that time.
I don't I don't recall.
I saw
I've
them.
seen them many, many, many times. So yeah.
I drove from Troy to Hartford to see them. And I think it was the first Black Album tour, the one where they had the Snake Pit.
Okay. Yeah.
Was that one. I saw them there. It was okay. But I mean, I saw them on Master of Puppets. I saw one of Jason's first shows. I saw that.
Oh,
That was
that's cool. Yeah.
Did I see them on And Justice for All? They played at RPI, didn't they, on that tour? They played at the hockey arena.
I don't think I was there.
No, I don't think you were. Not yet. Uh, but yeah, did I see them on that tour? I don't think I did. I think I just saw them on Puppets and the Black Album, and that's it. I've not seen them ever since. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Saw them on Puppets. So you saw them on with their own tour for Puppets or for opening for Ozzy?
No, they were headlining. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Who opened for them? I'll have to think about that. I'll have to Google that. I can't remember who it was. Was it Exodus? Maybe I don't know. Exodus would make sense. I'm gonna Google that right now. Uh, but so when was the last time you saw them?
I don't recall now. It's probably been 5 years or so. Whenever, um, maybe it's been longer. It's so hard to tell with that band since they come out with albums every decade now. I'm wondering if it was the album. It was what's the album that you don't like? That was 2 albums ago.
I was gonna say anything after the Black Album. I don't know. What is it?
Yeah. I forget the name of it. The tour was. It's funny that's a good indication of how blurry it's become because they just haven't made a defining song where I can point to it. Death Magnetic. That's the name of the album.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
one that hurts every mastering engineer.
Which is the album I liked. So the last album of theirs that I liked. So
I've never heard it. Okay, so Metal Church is the band that opened from them. The Metal Church is from Seattle. They were awesome. I was really into them at the time too. Super interesting. Like December 1st, 1986. That's crazy. Yep, December 1st, 1986. Wild.
They were good. I guess they're still around, huh?
Metal Church or Metallica?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Metal Church.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe they are, but I think they'd be in the nostalgia / resurgence zone right now. I don't think they've been around continuously since then. I don't think that's true. But yeah, man, that was a really great show. It was in a tiny place, man. It was so small compared to any arena for sure. It was like a secondary venue that was inside Madison Square Garden in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of good shows there. So yeah, that was like, that has to be, when they toured with Ozzy, was Cliff Burton in the band?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how that went. But I think that the tour that I saw was the Damage Inc. tour, which was their headlining tour. But I don't think they were stadium quality yet, or stadium sized yet anyway.
Right.
But Justice for All was hockey rink and stadium size at that point.
Yeah, you would have known if you saw it, because that was the most Iron Maiden-esque of their tours, since the statue fell on them and all that kind of stuff.
And sometimes the lighting truss.
Yeah, poor guy.
Oh, I guess I also wanted to mention, I think maybe I gave you the link to his stuff, but let me find the name of his channel. Tommaso Zilio, do you know that guy?
I do not.
Let me find his channel. He has a book that he wrote, but I've never read the book. It's very guitar centric. It's like music theory for guitar with no piano in it. That's like his claim to fame. Complete chord mastery. That's his thing. His YouTube channel is Music Theory for Guitar. He's a good teacher. He's this like Italian guitar player, teacher, whatever, plays metal, plays everything, but he's really good with theory stuff. He does like whiteboard discussions of that kind of stuff. I think he overuses the whiteboard. It's like, when you see a guy who's giving a slide presentation and he's reading directly off the slides the entire time, which I cannot stand. I don't know. Actually, I don't know why, but he seems to write a lot of things that he says. He's got an Italian accent, but it's not anything that you can't understand. But yeah, he's awesome. I saw something really good about. I have to look in my web history about it. But about how to use seventh chords, maybe, or something, where he finally showed an application of, hey, if you can take this particular type of chord and put it between any of the chords in the major scale, and they're natural bridges to the next note or the next chords in the scale. It was a really cool discussion where he actually described that sort of thing and then showed how it works and why it works. And I think part of it was about voice leading, and the other part was about, but I mean, here he does he's got a video called the Fade to Black modulation, and it's about Fade to Black, Metallica.
Oh, nice.
I did get this thing, but I got this a long time ago. This sort of interests me in a outside kind of way, a geometry of music.
Wow.
And this is have you ever, well, you must have, because this is your kind of area of your work, seeing those alternative controllers that are not pianos. They're like a cluster of hexagons, 500 hexagons, and the geometry of how the chords or scales or what play out across diagonals, blah, blah, blah. This talks about that kind of stuff. But I think I started a long time ago with this book. It seems super interesting. And then I started to read. I was like, whoa, I actually don't even know a lot of the vocabulary in chapter 1 that he's talking about.
Right.
Now I think I do. Hey, we got a visitor. So I have this, and I'm starting to just sort of thumb through it. We'll see if I actually make a dent in it at all in the coming week. I don't really know.
Need something? No. Okay. Yeah, so I've actually made some of those interfaces as one of them on an app that uses AudioKit called Howl, which is like a vocal processor, and I tried to learn how to use them. I think it's like you end up going, circle fifths in one direction, fourths in the other, and then thirds. So I think it makes sense, and there's definitely some intelligence to it, and apparently it's not like brand new. I think certain accordions use that style too.
Yep, totally.
So I love it when you think some new technology happened and it's really just something else someone had thought of in the 1800s. It was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know much. I don't know how to play that stuff at all. I think it would be cool to learn, and I have seen how a bunch of the common chord progressions are really nice, tight shapes in this system.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think he also draws some stuff about harmony, like using like three-dimensional shapes and that sort of thing too. Which
3 dimensions, that's all we need.
Yeah, the hypercube of harmony. And actually, that's kind of funny because I did look at something. I saw it on Instagram and I like saved it as a bookmark, and it was like, yeah, it's an app that's on your phone, and you play ambient, you explore ambient textures through the Tesseract. I was like, oh God, no.
The Tesseract.
Yeah, like, no.
Wow.
Like, yeah, and it's like, stop with all, I mean, whatever. I don't mean to say it, but I'm going to say it. Stop with all the making music only on your phone thing. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, and stop believing that like tech is going to solve all these problems and make things trivial. It's not going to do the opposite, I think.
If tech really meant it, it would unseat MIDI as a thing.
Something I wrestle with every day with my job, like working with clients. Some of them are excellent musicians and they know what they want and they know they can describe it, and then we have to just not only make it for them, but make it for people who walk up to the app for the first time. It's really intriguing. Where a lot of the two of the projects now are heavily based in music theory, so like having these discussions with you is like a really good warm up for me. Writing code around some of these concepts too. Luckily, I have musicians to check on me, so when I make a mistake of Locrian versus Phrygian, they're there to stomp on me immediately. But yeah,
totally. Well, I'm actually super stoked that my discussion of like why seventh chords and sevenths are important. Actually, I seem to have pulled that off earlier today. That's good.
Yeah, that's cool.
I learned like a thing. That's good. But like that's for me. Actually, that's a pretty huge a huge jump going from zero. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So I actually don't know what the heck I'm going to do in the next week. I certainly am going to it'll certainly involve the books that I was talking about today. Although the one smaller book I feel like I finished reading all that book had to offer, and now this mastering chord changes situation is what I'm reading now. See where that takes me. Maybe
I think we should aim to like share some videos with each other that we can watch beforehand.
okay.
So we have more, yeah, because I love doing that, and whatever you recommend I'm sure is going to be super useful to me.
Cool.
And then it'll give us some more, because I didn't get a chance to really do much other than just again practicing the band sort of thing this week either. So this just keep me on the ball a bit.